What this means is the heated ionosphere acts like a giant dam, rerouting the path of the jet stream. The jet stream flows between 6 and 9 miles above the Earth's surface and reaches speeds up to 300 miles per hour.
The jet stream is a focused, high-velocity rope of air that moves billions of gallons of water around our world, like a giant river at 50, 60,000 feet up. It moves all the water around our world for rain, for storms. This is the lifeblood of planet Earth.
Could Tesla's theories help create a new generation of covert weather weapons?
It was the Russians that were creating this signal.
Perhaps it's already here. Has the United States already been attacked by a weather weapon? July 1976. Strange, unexplained blackouts in worldwide communications plagued the globe. Ham radio operators all over the U.S. are picking up seemingly random, unknown radio signals. It's causing static interference with radio, television, and even telephone transmissions all across North America.
This signal was a tapping that would go for like 10 beats and then stop for a bit, and 10 beats and stop for a bit.
U.S. scientists discovered the cryptic signal is coming from the Soviet Union. They assign it an innocuous name.
It was called the Russian woodpecker because it was the Russians that were creating this signal, and the sound that the ham operators heard was essentially that sort of clicking, pecking sound.
Here is an actual tape recording of the mysterious signal. Satellite photos reveal the Russians have secretly constructed a gigantic radio transmitter and are covertly transmitting extremely low-frequency waves, otherwise known as ELF waves, into the atmosphere over North America. The Russians would continue beaming this signal until at least 1989, the last time they were detected. But why?
The way the woodpecker worked was that you had a very large radar that was pumping out millions and millions of watts of radio frequency energy. And that tick, 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 tick was each time a pulse was sent out. And in each one of those pulses, there was a tremendous amount of energy. What they were trying to do is to see our ballistic missiles coming up into space and on their way into the Soviet Union.
An over-the-horizon radar system meant to provide Russia with an early warning of U.S. missile launches is one possible explanation. But other researchers around the world now suspect something more sinister was at play.
At the times that the signal was coming through, there were some very bizarre things taking place.
In 1982, a report by Pentagon researcher L. Ponte alleges the Russian woodpecker's signal is actually creating layers of artificial ionization in the upper atmosphere, which means it could have been bending the jet stream and altering global wind patterns, just as Nikola Tesla had theorized nearly 100 years earlier.
There's been a lot of research in military labs over what you can do with putting radio waves into the atmosphere and changing the dynamics of the atmosphere. And some of the research indicates that one can move the jet stream around and thus induce weather conditions.
Was the woodpecker yet another Cold War weapon directed at the U.S.? Turns out while the woodpecker was in operation, something very strange began happening. From 1987 through 1992, California experienced the most severe drought in the state's history. Crops and livestock were dying. Food prices were escalating. People were terrified. Scientists were baffled.
Growing up in Northern California, I remember this drought very well. I remember just how scared everybody was because of how dry it was, how low the humidity was, and how easy the fires were started. It was scary.
Some researchers believe the cause of California's drought was a mysteriously stalled high-pressure system 800 miles off the state's coast, blocking the usual flow of moist Pacific air from coming ashore. An extremely unusual atmospheric anomaly. This is the jet stream in the early 1980s. high-altitude winds gently pushing moisture towards the southwestern coast of the United States. The arrows indicate winds blowing in an easterly direction. But according to NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, between the years of 1988 and 1992, during the California drought, an anomaly occurs in the jet stream. The winds appear to change direction, blowing east to west instead of west to east, indicating the jet stream coming into the west is suddenly much weaker than normal, causing a drought. By 1995, the jet stream returns to normal. The Soviets deny any involvement in weather warfare. Still, believers feel the denial is not surprising. In fact, it's expected.
One of the significant elements of weather warfare is the plausible deniability angle to it. You can't really attribute it to anyone at all because you don't know if it's just the weather or if it's some more sinister military application that you're being subjected to.
If you can trigger nature to do the work for you, you can raise covert wars, which our country and many others are famous for, and yet have the deniability that goes along with it.
Weather experts from NOAA and from the National Weather Service can't explain why the jet stream anomaly occurred. Perhaps it's all just a part of Mother Nature's unpredictable ebbs and flows. Still, it's no coincidence that the United States began building its own mysterious array of antennas in February 1992. They are located in Gakona, Alaska. The project is called HARP.
HARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, originally a joint effort of the Air Force and Navy in cooperation with a number of academic institutions.
It is today the world's largest radio broadcasting station, but it's not designed to broadcast for human ears. It uses a unique patented ability to focus the energy coming out of the antenna field and injects that energy into a spot at the very top of the atmosphere in a region called the ionosphere.
HARP is comprised of 180 antennas, approximately 72 feet tall, linked together to function as one giant steerable antenna. Steerable because it can aim millions of watts of ELF waves into one tiny patch of the atmosphere.
The amount of energy we're talking about here is 3.6 million watts. To give you an idea of what that is, the largest legal AM radio station in North America is 50,000 watts. HARP is 72,000 50,000 watt radio stations injecting their entire output into a spot that's about 12 miles across by about 2.5 miles deep by about 90 miles up.
This is where HARP is pointing. It's an area located roughly 300 miles from Anchorage. The U.S. military says HARP is merely being used to study the physical and electrical properties and behavior of the ionosphere for both civilian and defense purposes. But another theory is surfaced. The intense energy being beamed into the sky by HARP is actually heating up the atmosphere, causing weather changes.
HARP is being used for weather modification. The military's own record proves it. They've admitted it within their own documents, and yet they still deny it to the public.
Dr. Brooks Agnew has researched ELF wave technology for the past 30 years and is convinced HARP's effect on the ionosphere does alter the weather.
HARP couldn't affect the jet stream directly, but indirectly it could, because if you push the ionosphere out into space, then the stratosphere just under the ionosphere has to move to fill in that gap. When it moves, it could pull the jet stream with it, thus rerouting it hundreds of miles, changing the way water moves through our atmosphere.